The United States, the UK, Canada, Germany, France, Europe, Australia, Japan, and seemingly all the rich countries of the world that everyone wanted to move to 20 years ago are currently facing an economic decline. There are no middle class, young people can't find jobs, and people don't want to have children, among many other issues. But why exactly are they all collapsing? And why only rich people seem to be thriving? That's what you'll find out in this video, where we're going to go through 5 of the biggest reasons why so many rich countries have a shrinking middle class. Let's get into it. The first reason is because inflation started to rise faster than income, especially since 2020. Some countries handled it relatively well. Countries like Switzerland, Japan, and Denmark saw lower cumulative inflation, often closer to around 8 to 15% over several years. But many others experienced much more. The United States, the UK, Canada, and much of Western Europe saw cumulative inflation closer to 20 to 30%. And that's just overall. If you focus on key things like housing and some foods, you'll find out that it's often even more than that. And for some countries in Eastern Europe, like Hungary and Poland, they saw periods where prices surged far more aggressively as well. Now here's the real problem. Wages didn't rise nearly as fast for most people. Yes, salaries increased in many countries, but often not enough to fully keep up with the cost of living. Do most of your friends make 30% more money now than before 2020? I doubt it. So even when someone technically got a raise, it sometimes felt meaningless because groceries, rent, insurance, childcare, and housing costs rose even faster. The second reason, and arguably the biggest reason everything is falling, is the pretty much global housing crisis. Across almost every Western country, housing prices increased much faster than wages. Canada became one of the clearest examples. Home prices exploded in cities like Toronto and Vancouver, where owning property became nearly impossible for many younger buyers without family help or extremely high incomes. Australia saw similar problems in Sydney and Melbourne. In the United States, cities like Los Angeles, San Francisco, Miami, New York, and even places once considered affordable like Las Vegas saw prices surge dramatically. And Europe wasn't immune either. Cities like Amsterdam, Dublin, Lisbon, and parts of Germany saw major affordability problems too. And this isn't just about buying homes anymore. Renting became painful too. In many cities, rent increased so quickly that people started spending more than half of their paycheck just keeping a roof over their head. Some younger adults delayed moving out. Others decided to move back with their parents. Families downsized as well. And having roommates became more common even among professionals earning decent salaries. The core issue is simply that wages never remotely kept up with housing inflation. In many places, home prices doubled or even tripled over long periods, while incomes barely rose. Before carrying on, since we're speaking of economics and finances, if you want to improve your finances in these hard times, you'll see in this video description some Amazon links to order budget planners if you want to start tracking your finances. Using them can help you figure out where your money goes and how to save hundreds of extra dollars every month that you probably didn't realize you were losing. Using one of these links would directly support the channel as well. Alright, let's get back into it. The third reason is aging populations. Most rich countries are getting older. People are having fewer children, birth rates are falling, and populations are aging faster than governments expected. This leaves us to many problems most people don't always realize, so I'll mention 3 of them. The first problem is taxes. When more people retire and fewer people are working, governments collect relatively less income tax while needing to support more retirees. That creates pressure somewhere. Governments either borrow more money, reduce spending, or ask working people to pay more through taxes. The second problem is healthcare. Older populations naturally need more medical care, more doctor visits, more surgeries, more medications, more long-term care. But at the exact same time healthcare demand rises, there are not only less taxes to fund healthcare services, but they are less healthcare workers in the first place. That creates a negative domino effect. And the third problem, similar to what was mentioned in the previous ones, is simply that economies slow down when there are fewer workers. Less construction workers means fewer homes get built. Fewer doctors and nurses means longer hospital wait times. Fewer skilled workers means lower productivity overall. And at the same time, governments start spending more money on retirement systems and healthcare instead of investing in productivity, innovation, infrastructure, or long-term economic growth. And over time, since tax revenue is not sufficient, governments need to use more debt to fund programs. and that leads to national debts growing almost everywhere. The fourth reason is wealth inequality. In most rich countries, a larger share of wealth is increasingly owned by a smaller group of people. And one important reason this matters is not necessarily the fact that they're so rich, but more about where the money is stored. You see, most wealthy people don't just keep billions sitting in cash. Their money is usually tied up in assets. Assets like stocks, real estate, private companies, and other investments. And over the last decade, asset prices have exploded, and thus why many already rich people just got richer. Now here's the problem. Most of the time, having lots of money and assets doesn't produce anything in the economy, or not as much as it could. Let me give you an example of what is often currently happening compared to what could be a more productive way billionaires could contribute to the overall economy. So imagine a billionaire suddenly gains another $1 million. Often, that money simply goes into stocks or other financial investments. Then the value of the $1 million grows over time. But in everyday life, not much changes for the local economy. No new jobs necessarily appear, no buildings get created, no businesses automatically open. Now another billionaire receives the same $1 million, but decides to start a real estate project with it. Suddenly you need architects, engineers, construction workers, electricians, suppliers, and employees to create the building. Now suddenly, people that were, let's say, unemployed are getting paid. Here you're boosting productivity, you're lowering unemployment, and you're helping the middle class by both paying them and also building houses for them, which indirectly helps reduce the price of housing. And most importantly for the billionaire, he now still owns a building worth at least $1 million that will grow in value like if he bought some stocks. So you might be wondering, why don't investors just always do that instead? Two reasons: liquidity and headache. At least that's how I like to say it. Why deal with employees, constructions, local taxes, government intervention, and many other stuff when you can just buy an Apple stock with that money and wait for the stock to grow? Not only that, but you can sell the money you make on a stock just by clicking the sell button, while selling a real estate building can take months of negotiation and headache. To be clear, I don't want to sound like I hate billionaires or whatever. I'm just trying to illustrate that wealth inequality is not necessarily the cause of middle-class issues, but how the wealth is used in majority of the time is arguably the reason. Now the fifth reason is that we went from manufacturing jobs to low-wage service jobs in most developed countries. For decades, many rich countries slowly moved away from manufacturing and leaned towards service-based jobs. And contrary to what many people assume, manufacturing jobs often paid surprisingly well. In other words, we gave $40 per hour manufacturing jobs away to replace them with $20 per hour service jobs instead. You might be wondering why manufacturing jobs pay so well. And that's primarily because they can create huge amounts of value per worker. One person in a factory might help produce dozens or even hundreds of televisions, phones, appliances, or industrial parts in a single day. That productivity allows companies to pay higher wages, sometimes $50 to even $200 per hour. Historically, manufacturing jobs often supported middle-class lifestyles, even for workers without university degrees. But then globalization accelerated. Companies realized they could produce products much more cheaply overseas. A factory worker earning $50 an hour in the United States or Western Europe might cost only a fraction of that in countries like China, Vietnam, or other lower-cost manufacturing hubs. From a business perspective, the decision often looked obvious: move factories abroad and reduce costs. The problem is mainly what replaced those jobs, which are in most cases low-pay service jobs. I'm talking about hospitality, delivery work, retail, gig economy jobs, warehousing, or even customer service. Some service jobs pay well, of course, but many don't create the same level of productivity or wages that manufacturing once did. A delivery driver, a hotel worker, or a rideshare driver can only serve so many customers in a day. And this created a strange economy. Rich countries still became wealthier overall, but many of the high-paying middle-class jobs became harder to find. Instead, economies created lots of lower-paying service work. So people kept hearing that GDP was growing and stock markets were booming, while many workers quietly felt like economic security was slipping away. So despite the fact that most of the countries mentioned in the video have actually accumulated more wealth and saw their GDPs grow, most of the middle class hasn't seen much of the benefits in their day-to-day life. The main winners of this new world are the asset owners, successful entrepreneurs, and people with high-paying jobs. The problem is that these three categories are only a small portion of people. If you enjoyed this video and want to see other similar content, make sure to subscribe to the channel and to watch one of the other videos showing at your screen right now.